Hello and welcome back to our channel. My name is Alex Karanda and I'm CTO of Decima Digital. Today we are going to continue a performance topic. The next two following bullet points: application performance and infrastructure performance. As well as during this session, we are going to review common performance issues and the way to improve the performance in general. Just want to remind that all performance metrics could be combined into three main performance points: front-end, application performance, and infrastructure performance. Last time we reviewed front-end performance, and today we are going to cover application performance and infrastructure. Let us quickly review infrastructure performance. Infrastructure performance is about the right service configuration and possibility to handle traffic without any issues. Here is the typical reference architecture for Magento project. Doesn't matter if it's AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, or DigitalOcean. In general, it should be looking like the same for all type of cloud solutions. So on the top, we usually have CDN solution. Magento recommends Fastly CDN as soon as it is natively integrated into Magento platform. It handles all static and public content. If no cache, Fastly CDN bypass request to load balancer. Load balancer uses some balancing algorithm to send traffic to corresponding web containers. Web containers proceed request with Nginx and PHP FPM. PHP FPM runs Magento application. And finally, Magento application using some external services like Redis, RDS, MariaDB, Elasticsearch, EFS, might be RabbitMQ, proceed, request, and deliver some content. So this is the typical reference architecture for Magento project. The good things about the infrastructure performance, as we could see on the reference architecture, it is represented with a list of known services. So we know which service is responsible for which part of application. And if you have some issues with sessions, as an example, we know that it is Redis. If you have problem with category pages, it is usually Elasticsearch. If you have problem with caching, it is usually Fastly CDN or Varnish. So configuring services in the right way, we can achieve the maximum performance and capacity. There are still some surprises from the operation system, like somebody might enable write barrier or hosting provider started some maintenance, but nowadays it becomes more rare and rare cases. So let us start from CDN. CDN is a content delivery network. It is geographically distributed group of servers that works together to provide a fastest way to deliver content from the closest location. There are a lot of different CDN solutions in the world, like CloudFront, Cloudflare, Akamai, Fastly. But the problem is content invalidation solution. So Magento has native integration with Fastly CDN. It has a list of rules and cases when Magento sent invalidation request to Fastly to update content with a new version of content. As well as Fastly has additional features like image optimization, converting images to WebP, to modern image formats, as well as it has a web application firewall, which also helps to protect Magento against some DDoS attack or any other security activities. Let us move on. Load balancer. It is a computer networking method to distribute workload across multiple containers. Choosing the right algorithm, we can balance load on our infrastructure. As an example, AWS offers two algorithms: round robin and list outstanding request. Round robin algorithm is the simplest one, and usually it is enough for infrastructure. How it works? It just cycles all load through all containers and gives a proportional load per each container. If you have two containers, it split load 50-50 between two containers. The list outstanding request algorithm, instead of cycling through the containers, it chooses the container with the lowest number of requests waiting for responses. So it's hard to say which algorithm is the best. It needs to identify what type of traffic you do have, and then you can choose which algorithm would be the best. Sometimes there could be introduced reverse proxy solution. Reverse proxy is a software or service which handles requests before web server. It is using caching mechanism to fastly return responses. If no cache records found in the reverse proxy, it would proxy request to the web server. The common reverse proxy solution is Varnish. It is recommended to use either CDN or reverse proxy. Both system usage are not recommended, and we might get endless cache problem. So moving on the level of containers, it is important to have the proper PHP and Nginx configuration. The most critical performance settings for PHP FPM, it's number of child processes. This number is quite empirical and depends on a lot of variables. So it depends on application response latency, amount of internal CPU memory, amount of CPU cores, amount of system memory. It can be defined during the load testing. So running load test and increasing number of child processes, we should be watching on CPU core load. If CPU cores load up to 90-95%, this is the hint that we reached a proper amount of child processes. Further increase of child processes will lead to response time growth and throughput degradation. In any case, there is also a formula to calculate the proper amount of child processes, but it's just theoretical formula. So you either can use a formula or practically identify these numbers with running load testing. Another way to speed up PHP execution time, it is using Zend opcache solution. Improves PHP performance by storing precompiled script bytecode somewhere in a shared memory. So it is minimizing input-output disk operation, as well as code is already precompiled, so it saves precompilation time. One of the important parameters for configuration is max accelerated files. Do not afraid to put high value of this parameter. Vanilla Magento has more than 60,000 files, so this value it should be quite higher. So our Magento application is running up, and we are communicating to multiple services. To be honest, there have been done a lot of improvements in the latest version of MySQL, Redis, Elasticsearch. So I would say the default settings of all of these services are really good enough for handling Magento. There's almost nothing to improve. In case if you want to do some tuning, it refers to services hardware parameter updates like RAM or introduce an additional server. Every application has a unique infrastructure needs, and these needs can be changed over the time. So it is critical to match application requirements with the right infrastructure configuration to meet the better performance. Once we choose our application configuration or built-in reference architecture, we should combine the following points: possibility to control, application scalability, maximum performance, maximum capacity, cost effectiveness, and security. So take into account all these parameters building your infrastructure. So once our infrastructure ready, let us run our application. Application performance usually represented as application response time. As faster, as better. Slow application response time affects overall page speed parameters, Google page speed parameters as well. Today, we are going to review top 10 Magento performance problems defined by Magento Professional Services team as the most critical. These are problems related to extensions, database, data collections, entity processing, caching, big data processing, synchronous operation, indexing, external request, and services usage. Let us see each problem in details. So number 10 is redundant modules. Modules might create load even if we don't use them. The good example of such modules are banner, Braintree, V, or abandoned cart. All these modules create some load on front end or on cron jobs. So the solution is to identify a list of modules which we don't need on the page. And if it's Magento modules, then disable such modules. If it's community extension, then such extension could be removed from the application. Number 9, less than optimal database queries. Actually, there are two typical problems about database query optimization. The first problem is about custom queries, which prepared in the less than optimal way. Usually it represents with full table scans, redundant joins, or processing entire catalog or million records tables. Another problem is about existing queries, where existing queries are used in the not designed way. As an example, some custom code might be running some filters on a field which were not designed to be applied to any filters. The good example is trying to run customer email filter on a sales order table where there is no index on such field. So the solutions, it's definitely run query optimization for all custom queries. We should be implementing database normalization or denormalization, depends on the situation. We should be validating all database indexes on the custom fields, add database indexes where we need. Number 8, the next problem. This old good problem about loading and processing data in the loop. This is a classic data processing issue, which came to us from Magento 1, and it's also common for all frameworks, not Magento only. What is the problem? The problem when each element in some collection is loaded from the database individually, which increases time for data processing, rendering, as well as increasing load on entire infrastructure. So what is a possible solution? Definitely some re-architecting required. So solution should be re-architected to fit the best performance approaches. It is usually recommended to use data collection, where we would be able to use a single query to load all data we need instead of loading each entity individually. The next one is loading data which already been loaded. This is another classic issue, which also common for all applications. So the problem when some methods are reloading the same data from the database several times during the single PHP session execution, or recalculating information each time we trigger this method, instead of returning already loaded data or pre-calculated information. So the solution should be the following. First, it's keep loaded data somewhere in the local property. Additionally, also caching mechanism could help to mitigate this issue. Sometimes Magento already have the right solution. Investigate Magento possibilities and to find the right method which we should be using. The good example for such solution might be configurable items loading. If you look in Magento code, there are 3 methods which return the same information. But all 3 methods return information in different ways. Get used product collection. This method reload data from the database each time we trigger this method. Get used products. This method keeps loaded data in the object property and load data only once from the database once we request it first time. Get saleable used products. It uses Redis cache and might not even trigger database to return data. Number 6, asynchronous operations. Magento have implemented asynchronous features for some data processing, but usually this disabled by default for some reason. So I would recommend to enable it. Enable asynchronous transactional emails, enable asynchronous grid processing, enable cron job parallel execution. The first 5, message queue. Quite a lot of custom data processing are usually implemented in less than optimal way. Like stock and price updates might happen synchronously via direct API calls, which create enormous load on the server. It also limits a bandwidth of the given API. Some data processing might be huge enough to be causing a memory leaks. Uploading a huge file might utilize the whole memory. Some synchronous operation might affect customer experience. So what is the solution? Magento has a built-in message queue functionality, which supports 2 storages like MySQL and RabbitMQ. So it is easy to use, default functionality, no additional services required. Unfortunately, not a lot of developers really loves and work with message queue. Might be due to lack of development experience. Okay, number 4 is indexing process. Often situation when some custom information might require additional data manipulation, running multiple database queries, running additional data aggregation to be prepared before it would be ready to be displayed on front end. Definitely, this operation on a page rendering might be badly affect overall website performance, might affect customer experience when he would be waiting seconds, minutes before all the data to be calculated, as well as its affect infrastructure load. The solution is obvious. Magento already has implemented indexing approach. Developers usually are really terrified when they hear Magento indexation question on an interview, how indexation works, or what is a partial indexation, what is the database triggers. But applying Magento indexation pattern is a perfect solution for such type of cases to sort out and prepare data before it would be ready to be displayed. Number 3, and it's a caching issue. Quite often, everybody forget about caching. Static blocks which are loaded on all pages like CMS block, faceted navigation, menu, banners, sliders. Common information which are loaded on all pages like attributes, front-end values, attribute options. Often used information which is accessible for all customers like countries or some rates or delivery options. All these are really good candidates for backend caching. So the first step to improve caching is to enable default caching mechanism which exists out of the box. So pay attention if all caching is enabled. For some reason, Magento disable custom attribute caching. So it needs to go into the back office or maybe via the command line and enable custom attribute caching. Once you're ready to start implementing backend caching, identify information which should be cached. Identify the caching relevance. No reason cache one-time used information. Information is multiple time used and could be shared between sessions, good candidate for caching. Identify the amount of data required to be cached. Either should be cached a big object or there should be cached 1,000 of smaller elements. As an example, cache entire color option attributes contains 5,000 records of colors, or we cache each color attribute option on each single product page. We are so close to our leaders, to the most common issues and most problematic issues. One of the biggest topics related to Magento performance is Redis high usage. So we might be triggering the same data from Redis multiple times, which cause a networking issue. Another problem is handling big objects. Redis might have a networking issue with a big caching records, like records with more than 10,000 objects in one single record might cause a problem. So what is the solution? Magento offers out-of-the-box 2 possible solutions to improve Redis cache usage. The first one is preloading cache keys. This feature allows to preload cache keys which are loaded multiple times on all pages based on the given configuration. So what needs to be done? First, needs to identify keys which are commonly loaded. This is fully manual operation, no automation tools here. So you just load page and collect all cache keys and find which keys are loaded more than one time. So if some cache keys is loaded multiple times on a single page, it is a good candidate to be preloaded. The configuration fee keys will be preloaded from the Redis on the first load, and next time it would be using local property and would not be interacting with the Redis to get data. Another solution which Adobe is offering, it's level 2 cache. It's quite questionable solution, to be honest. Adobe is positioning as a solution which might significantly reduce Redis traffic. The idea is to leverage dev local shared memory to keep all cache information. How it works? On the very first request, application save data in Redis and save data in a local dev shared memory. Next time, if you run request on the same server, application would be reading dev shared memory first, and if you have information, then we would be using this cache record from dev shared instead of Redis. If you don't have, we would trigger Redis to load cached information, put it in shared memory, and next time we would be using shared memory. And our winner. Finally, we come with the most comprehensive and the biggest topic related to Magento performance. Let me try to explain the problem here. So Magento has a mechanism to handle private and public content. Public content is fully cached and do not interact with application before the cache would be invalidated. The entire HTML page content should be cached and it should be identical for all customer sessions. Meanwhile, private content is loaded as a JavaScript request to the customer section data handler, and the response is stored somewhere in the browser storage, and using knockout populates page with private data. So customer section data should be loaded only one time once a new customer session started. Should not be any additional customer section data request once you open home page, the log page, product detail page. No extra requests should happen here. Customer section data should be loaded only in case if some private actions happened. Log in, log out, add to cart, remove from cart, any post request. So if you see customer section data handlers triggered on every single pages multiple times, or once we reload the page, we do have problem number one. What is the actual problem? Why it's problem? So for me, as a CTO, the first problem that a regular developer even doesn't see or realize that problem exists. Regular developers still thinks that customer section data load in every single pages, it's normal. No, it's not normal. It is a problem. Actually, what happens? A single Magento request, a single page visit is generating multiple non-cacheable requests to the Magento application. It creates extra load on the infrastructure. It does a lot of redundant job because usually this request return information we already retrieved. So we don't need this information at all because it's the same. This significantly reduce website concurrency because it uses a PHP FPM child processes to handle this non-cached request. Even if the main page cached, a customer still create a load on application. If customer is logged in, it also might cause customer session collision issue. Each request start customer session interaction. So what is the solution? The solution is to find all custom code which is forcing customer section data reloaded on every single pages. Find all post requests and convert into get request. So there should not be any post requests which are triggered on a page load. Remove all redundant AJAX requests which could cause this issue. Rebuild AJAX requests to be cacheable. We should disable any modules which is doing some dirty job, forcing customer section data loading on every single pages because this module was designed and developed in the wrong way and do not follow Magento best practices. Application performance optimization like a multi-layer pie. Before you fix the top layer, you don't know what are on the bottom layer, what is the flavor of the bottom layers. Once you implement one portion of improvements, there could be the other new candidates for improvements which are hidden by the main top layer. Application performance optimization is a never-ending process, especially for such application like Magento, which has more than 60,000 PHP classes. It's crazy. There is always possible way to find what to improve here. Application performance optimization should always be reasonable. It is always needs to calculate development effort versus business value, which this improvement brings to you. No need to do optimization just for optimization. Do optimization when it needs and stop when it's not reasonable in terms of budgets and resources. So thank you for your time and keep your website performing very well.